Good morning, students. This is the fifth session of statistics. Okay. In the previous session, we have discussed only about the basic concepts. If you know the basic concepts clearly, you may not be finding any difficulties in the further concepts. Okay. In the previous concepts or previous sessions, we have discussed the definitions and populations, under that different varieties. One is finite and infinite. Then we have discussed different types of characteristics, under that qualitative and quantitative. Related to that, we have discussed variables and attributes. And under variables itself, there are two categories. One is discrete as well as continuous variables. And also we have studied the different types of scales of measurement for qualitative data. Fine. Try to recall, students, the definition of statistics. What it says, it is the branch of science which deals with collection, organization, presentation and analysis and interpretation of numerical data. Here collection, organization, presentation, analysis and interpretation, or giving the conclusion part, interpretation of the numerical data. So this is the third step. Once if you done the collection, then you have to go for organization. Then the third step is to present the data clearly. So what are the ways we can present it? In how many ways we can present the data? So let us see. Here presentation can be done in statistics. There are three ways we can, mainly three ways we can present it. Presentation. One is classification, and second one is tabulation, and third one is diagrammatic and graphical representation. And graphical presentation. So, in today's class, let me talk about these two concepts, classification and tabulation. The third concept, diagrammatic and graphical representation, as a separate chapter, you are going to study in the coming days. Now, in today's class, let me discuss classification and tabulation. Now, this is the third chapter of your syllabus, Unit 3, Classification and Tabulation. Oh. Sometimes what we do is we collect the data, maybe voluminous and complex too. At that time, one cannot easily understand, also it not be able for the further analysis purpose. When the data is small, handling of these data are very easy, whereas bulk data handling is too difficult. So what we have to do is, we have to simplify the data first and then we go for the analysis purpose. So students, this is the one of the familiar concept or the construction of frequency distribution you have already studied in the lower section, that is construction of frequency distribution, here writing the class interval and tag marks and frequency over here. So all these things you have studied in the lower section itself, but in detail you are going to study here also, and few other new concepts will be there in the first year syllabus. So no worry about the first year new concept. So they are here. No. So try to understand the keyword of the classification, that is class year. So first of all, you should know what is meant by class year. Class. So for example, if I consider the family of 200 members regarding their income, age, sex, then literacy, marital status, etc. If I am going to consider here, the data may be too long and it is complex. Here, 200 families information I am going to collect it. I don't know how many family members are containing in the age group between 10 to 20 or 20 to 30, like that. One can't identify how many people are coming under the age group between this and this. So, as it is a representative data or rough data, if we present it, one cannot understand. So, for that, what we have to do, I can collect or I can consider education, one particular characteristic, literacy or education here. If I consider, I can make a category, that is how many family members are belonging to, or how many family members are educated, and how many family members are uneducated. Like that, if I classify, then one can easily recognize these many family members are educated and these many family members are uneducated. That means one particular characteristic I can make a subgroups or subdivision, what we call it as a class year. For example, one more, that is marital status. Here, some of the family members are married as well as single. There may be singles also there. So I can make a category here: married, and unmarried. So like that, when we categorize it, one can easily recognize or one can easily understand easily. So this is what we make in the classes here. For example, one more example that I will give is about the cricket. Cricket is a game which is played between two teams of 11 members. So these 11 members in that one team, 11 members in a one particular team, that is, there may be an all-rounder, there may be a good bowler, or there may be a good batsman or wicket keeper. Like that, here I can make a category that out of 11 members, I can make a category that all-rounders, bowlers, batsmen and wicket keepers. So there may be 4 and 2, 2, 3 like this. So 4 members are belonging to, or 4 members are all-rounder in a one team. That is, out of 11 members, 4 members are all-rounder. Like that, I have divided into subgroups. So as it is ನಿಮಗೆ ನೋಡಿದ್ರೆ 11 ಮೆಂಬರ್ಸ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಯಾರು ಎಷ್ಟು ಜನ ಬ್ಯಾಟ್ಸ್ಮನ್ ಇದ್ದಾರೆ, ಗುಡ್ ಬ್ಯಾಟ್ಸ್ಮನ್ ಇದ್ದಾರೆ ಅಥವಾ ಬೌಲರ್ಸ್ ಇದ್ದಾರೆ ಅಂತ ನಿಮಗೆ ಹಾಗೇನೆ ಹೇಳಿಕ್ಕೆ ಬರೋದಿಲ್ಲ. So once if we done the categorization, one can easily say. So this is what making the groups or classes. These are all called classes. This is what the meaning of or the keyword of classification is the classes, or we call it as groups. Now, before going to the definition, you should know the meaning of classification. Now, let us see the meaning of classification first. After that, we will move towards the definition. Now, the meaning of classification here. Meaning, Professor Horace Lecturer says, Professor Horace Lecturer says, classification is the process of making units into sequences and groups according to their common characteristics. Or in other words, separating them into different but related parts. So this is what the meaning of a classification. So what he says, Professor Horace Lecturer says, classification is the process of making the units into sequences and groups according to what? According to common characteristics possessed by them, or in other words, it is separating them into different but related parts. What he says, it is a process or any method we are taking for what purpose? For making the groups and sequences. Sequences are nothing but here, one after the other. So, as I give for the first example here, families of 200 members. That means here I have collected income, expenditure, or age, sex, literacy, like that. I have to arrange it one after the other. That means it is a sequences, order. In order wise, we have to arrange it. Then what we have to do is, we have to make the groups. That means here I have discussed already. That means groups or class nothing but same. Suppose if I consider one particular characteristic, marital status is one particular characteristic, I can divide into two. That means I am making the subgroups or subdivisions, that we call it as groups. That means here married and unmarried. This is what actually the process of making the groups into two, that is, we call it as the meaning of the classification, or separating them into different but as a related part. We are separating them into different as a related characteristic is known as the meaning of the classification. I hope you have got the clear idea about the meaning of a classification. Now let us move towards the definition of a classification. Note down, students. Professor K S Lecturer says classification is the process of making the units into sequences and groups according to common characteristics or else separating them into different but related parts. Now, definition of definition of classification here. It is related to meaning itself. Here, definition, classification is the process of making the units into groups or classes according to common characteristic possessed by the units. Is called classification. So note down, classification is the process of making or arranging the units into groups or classes according to what? According to common characteristics possessed by the items or units. So this is nothing but, as I told earlier, any process or any method we are taking or any act we are taking up for what purpose? For making the arrangement or making the groups or classes according to what? According to common characteristics possessed by the units or items is called classification. So here, for example, I can take here income. Income is one particular characteristic. Income is one particular characteristic. I can make a division that below 10,000 rupees and 10,000 to 20,000 and above 20,000, like that. I can make a division according to what? According to common characteristics. So this is what? These are all the what? Income of different families in a different category. That means ಎಷ್ಟು ಜನ members of a family below 10,000 ಇದೆ ಅಥವಾ 10,000 ಮತ್ತು 20,000 ಒಳಗಡೆ ಬರುತ್ತೆ ಅಥವಾ above 20,000, like that I can make a division, or we call it as groups or classes according to what? According to common characteristics. So this is what I have taken the act of making groups or classes here, that we call it as a classification. Is that clear? So in other words, for example, sales and production, these two are related things, so we can make the classification there. Or else number of residents, number of, or according to occupation, and number of residents. Number of residents. So here I can take different occupation. I can take teacher, doctor, engineers, lawyers, like that. I can mention different occupation and corresponding number of residents here. So this is what you can take example for a classification. Okay. Now, from this classification, what we can achieve or what are the objectives of classification? Let us see. So, ಏನನ್ನ achieve ಮಾಡಬಹುದರಿಂದ general ಆಗಿ. So, as I told earlier, sometimes when the data is huge, the handling of the data may be difficult. So, what we have to do is, we have to brief the data, or else we have to simplify the data, or we have to reduce the size of the data, so that one can easily use it for a further statistical analysis. So now let us see what are the objectives of classification one by one. Objectives of classification. So first I have mentioned here to reduce the size of the data. To reduce size of the data. How we can reduce it? By briefing the information. Sometimes we don't want all the information, all the details, but we need only brief information. In that, everything should be covered. So that is what the briefing or reducing the size of the data. For example, this year, board examination, board members wanted to know how many students have scored 625. And check ಮಾಡಬೇಕಿದ್ರೆ ಏನು ಮಾಡ್ತಾರೆ ಅವರು? They will take year-wise data, year-wise data and marks, higher marks score. So here 2020, 2019, 2018, like that, they may take different years and corresponding marks scored by the students. Only we need what here? Those who scored out of out. That means 625 ಜಾಸ್ತಿ ಜನ ಸ್ಕೋರ್ ಮಾಡಿದ್ದಾರೆ ಅಂತ ಚೆಕ್ ಮಾಡಬೇಕಿದ್ರೆ ಅವರು ಏನು ಮಾಡ್ತಾರೆ? They will collect the data of or marks of students. Yes, sir. So they will give the conclusion. That means here 6 members in this year, and previous year maybe 4, 2, like that. Then what they make the classification according to year wise. So this is what the reducing the size. ಅವರು ಎಲ್ಲ ಇನ್ಫಾರ್ಮೇಶನ್ ಅನ್ನ ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಶೋ ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಇಲ್ಲ, ಬಟ್ ಏನ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಿದ್ದಾರೆ ನಮಗೆ ಈಸಿಲಿ ನೋಡಬಹುದು. ಇಯರ್ ವೈಸ್ ಡೇಟಾವನ್ನ ಏನ್ ಮಾಡಬಹುದು? ಕಂಪ್ಯಾರಿಸನ್ ಮಾಡಬಹುದು. So this is what the reducing the size of the data. And what other things we can achieve from the classification is to bring the similarities, similarities is together. So this is what actually marks is a similar thing. Yes sir, year wise data ತಗೊಂಡ್ರೆ ಏನ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಿದ್ದೆ ನಾನು? marks ಅನ್ನ ಮಾತ್ರ ಕನ್ಸಿಡರ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಿದ್ದೇನೆ. So here similar things we can bring it together, but as a year-wise data I have collected. For example, another example, here productions of a paddy or productions of sugar, state-wise ತಗೊಂಡ್ರೆ ಏನಾಗುತ್ತೆ? ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಏನು productions main ಆಗುತ್ತೆ. You can bring the similar things together or homogeneous things together. Production is a one particular characteristic, or production of different paddy, you can bring it together. So this is what the similar things we can bring it together. And third one is comparison purpose, to comparison purpose. So here, as I told, so this example only I will take here 6 and 4, 2 like that. So compared to previous year, this year students have scored 625. Number of students are more here compared to previous year. So this is what the comparison can be done. So year wise comparison ಮಾಡಬಹುದು ಅಥವಾ ಸ್ಟೇಟ್ ವೈಸ್ ಕಂಪ್ಯಾರಿಸನ್ ಮಾಡಬಹುದು. ಲಿಟರಸಿ ರೇಟ್ ಅನ್ನು ಚೆಕ್ ಮಾಡಬೇಕಿದ್ರೆ ಯಾವ ಸ್ಟೇಟ್ ಮೋರ್ ಲಿಟರೇಟ್ ಅಂತ ಚೆಕ್ ಮಾಡಬೇಕಿದ್ರೆ ಏನು ಮಾಡಬಹುದು, ಆಲ್ ದ ಡೇಟಾಸ್ ವಿ ಹ್ಯಾವ್ ಟು ಕಲೆಕ್ಟ್ ಇಟ್, ಆರ್ ವಿಚ್ ಸಿಟಿ ಇಸ್ ಎಕ್ಸ್ಪೆನ್ಸಿವ್. So all these things we can compare it. Not only in our country, country to country we can compare it. Company to company we can compare it. All this can be possible. So the last thing is it enables for the further analysis purpose to enables further statistical analysis. So here ನಿಮಗೆ ಅನಾಲಿಸಿಸ್ ಬೇರೆ ನೆಕ್ಸ್ಟ್ ಪರ್ಪಸ್ ಗೆ ಏನಂತ ಹೇಳಿದ್ರೆ, ಅನಾಲಿಸಿಸ್ ಪರ್ಪಸ್ ಮಾಡಬೇಕಿದ್ರೆ ಹೇಳಿದ್ರೆ ಈಗ ಯಾವ ಡಿಸ್ಟ್ರಿಕ್ಟ್ ಪ್ರತಿ ವರ್ಷ ಹೈಯೆಸ್ಟ್ ಸ್ಕೋರ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಿದ್ದಾರೆ ಅಂತ ನೋಡ್ಲಿಕ್ಕೆ ಏನ್ ಮಾಡಬಹುದು, ಇಯರ್ ವೈಸ್ ಡೇಟಾವನ್ನ ನೀವು ಚೆಕ್ ಮಾಡಿದ್ರೆ ಏನಾಗುತ್ತೆ, ಅಲ್ಲಿ ದಿಸ್ ಡಿಸ್ಟ್ರಿಕ್ಟ್ is a more or consistent scorer, has consistent players ಅಂತ ಹೇಳ್ಬೋದು. ಕ್ರಿಕೆಟ್ ಗೆ ಬಂದ್ರೆ ಅಥವಾ ಸ್ಪೋರ್ಟ್ಸ್ ಗೆ ಬಂದ್ರೆ ಯಾವುದೇ ಇದರಲ್ಲಿ ಯಾವ ಪ್ಲೇಯರ್ ಬೆಸ್ಟ್ ಸ್ಕೋರರ್ ಅಂತ ಚೆಕ್ ಮಾಡಬೇಕಿದ್ರೆ ನೀವು ಏನ್ ಮಾಡಬಹುದು, all these data we can consider. So it enables for this further analysis purpose. So all these are the what objectives of a classification. Note all students, to reduce the size of the data and to bring the similarities together, and third one is to comparison purpose, and the fourth one is enables further statistical analysis purpose. So all these are objectives of a classification. So in today's class we have discussed the definition of classification as well as meaning and the objectives of classification. I hope you guys have clear idea about all these things. In the next class I will be discussing about the different types of classification and how we can do the classification related to different things.